The Battle of Hong Kong was never meant to be won. From the moment the first Japanese shells fell, the defenders knew the outcome was almost inevitable. What they did not know was how brutal the fight would become, how fast the colony would collapse, and how high the human cost would be. Fought in the opening days of the Pacific War, the battle became a tragic example of courage against overwhelming force. A fight waged not for victory, but for time, dignity, and survival. In 1941, Hong Kong was a British crown colony perched on the edge of an expanding Japanese empire. For years, Japan had been at war in China, slowly tightening its grip on the region. Hong Kong was isolated, surrounded on three sides by Japanese-controlled territory, and separated from the rest of the British Empire by thousands of miles. British military planners understood a harsh truth. If Japan attacked, Hong Kong could not be held. Reinforcements would not arrive in time. Naval support would be limited. Air power would be overwhelmed. Still, the decision was made to defend the colony. The reason was political as much as military. Abandoning Hong Kong without a fight would damage British prestige and morale across Asia. So a small garrison was assembled. British regular troops, Indian Army units, local Chinese volunteers, and in late 1941, 2 Canadian battalions were sent halfway around the world to strengthen the defense: the Royal Rifles of Canada and the Winnipeg Grenadiers. Many of these soldiers had never seen combat. They arrived believing they were reinforcing a quiet post. Within weeks, they would be fighting for their lives. Japan had very different plans. At dawn on December 8, 1941, just hours after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japanese artillery opened fire along the border of the new territories. The Pacific War had begun, and Hong Kong was one of its first victims. Japanese forces crossed the Shan-Chun River and advanced rapidly, supported by artillery, aircraft, and experienced infantry hardened by years of fighting in China. The defenders attempted to hold the Gin Drinkers Line, a defensive system stretching across the Kowloon Peninsula. On paper, it looked formidable. In reality, it was thinly manned, incomplete, and impossible to defend against a determined enemy. Within days, Japanese troops infiltrated the line, flanking defensive positions and forcing a withdrawal. The defenders fell back toward Kowloon, then across Victoria Harbor to Hong Kong Island itself. By December 13th, the mainland was lost. Hong Kong Island became the final stand. Japanese artillery and aircraft now dominated the battlefield. Bombs fell on airfields, power stations, and civilian areas. Fires burned across the city. The island's defenders dug in along ridges, hills, and narrow passes, knowing the Japanese assault was coming. Civilians crowded into shelters and basements, listening to the sound of explosions echo through the streets. On the night of December 18th, Japanese troops crossed Victoria Harbor under cover of darkness. Small boats slipped across the water as artillery fire rained down on defensive positions. The landing caught many defenders by surprise. Japanese soldiers quickly established beachheads at North Point and Taiku, pushing inland toward the high ground. What followed was some of the most brutal fighting of the campaign. Canadian, British, and Indian troops launched desperate counterattacks, often charging uphill into machine gun fire. Combat was close, chaotic, and deadly. In the hills around Mount Parker and Jardines Lookout, soldiers fought hand-to-hand with rifles, bayonets, grenades, and knives. Positions changed hands multiple times in a single night. Wounded men lay in the open, unable to be recovered under constant fire. One of the most critical locations was Wong Nai Chung Gap, a narrow pass that controlled movement between the north and south sides of the island. When Japanese troops captured it, the defense of Hong Kong was effectively split in two. Units were isolated. Communication broke down. Commanders lost contact with their men. The defenders were now fighting separate battles, cut off from each other and slowly being crushed. Despite the hopeless situation, resistance continued. At Stanley Peninsula, Canadian troops and British units held out against repeated assaults. They were low on ammunition, exhausted, and surrounded, but they refused to surrender. Hospitals overflowed with wounded soldiers and civilians. Doctors and nurses worked without rest, often under fire. Water supplies were disrupted. Food became scarce. Fires burned unchecked across neighborhoods. The Japanese advance was ruthless. Prisoners were sometimes executed. Civilians were caught in the crossfire or deliberately targeted. Hospitals were attacked. The rules of war were ignored. Fear spread across the island as reports of massacres and atrocities circulated among defenders and civilians alike. By December 24th, the situation was beyond recovery. Japanese forces controlled most of the island. Defensive positions had collapsed. Water reservoirs were in enemy hands. Ammunition was nearly gone. Thousands of civilians were trapped in the fighting, and the risk of mass slaughter grew by the hour. The British governor, Sir Mark Young, faced an impossible choice: continue fighting and risk the complete destruction of the civilian population, or surrender and hope to save lives. On December 25, 1941, Christmas Day, the decision was made. Hong Kong surrendered. The day became known as Black Christmas. The battle had lasted just 17 days. For the defenders, the cost was devastating. Thousands were killed or wounded. Many survivors were taken prisoner and sent to brutal Japanese POW camps, where starvation, disease, forced labor, and abuse were common. The Canadian battalions suffered especially high casualties, marking one of the darkest chapters in Canadian military history. For civilians, the suffering was only beginning. Japanese occupation would last nearly 4 years. Food shortages, executions, forced labor, and repression became part of daily life. Families were torn apart. Entire communities were devastated. And yet, the Battle of Hong Kong is remembered not for its defeat, but for its courage. The defenders never had a realistic chance of victory. They knew it. Their commanders knew it. But they fought anyway. They delayed the Japanese advance. They tied down enemy forces. And they demonstrated that even in the face of overwhelming odds, resistance mattered. The battle also revealed the scale of Japan's ambitions. Hong Kong was not an isolated attack. It was part of a massive, coordinated offensive across the Pacific and Southeast Asia. Within weeks, Japan would capture Singapore, the Philippines, and vast territories across Asia. The world was entering a new, darker phase of the war. Hong Kong's fall marked the end of British dominance in East Asia. It shattered the illusion of imperial security, and it showed how quickly power could shift in a global conflict. Today, the Battle of Hong Kong stands as a sobering reminder of the cost of war and the price paid by those sent to fight battles that cannot be won. It is a story of sacrifice without glory, bravery without reward, and endurance in the face of inevitable defeat. The defenders of Hong Kong did not change the outcome of the war, but they changed something else. They showed that courage is not defined by victory. Sometimes it is defined by standing your ground, even when the end is already written.